You are listening to Offensive Lines with Marlon and Boyd. Small stakes NFL gambling for the average fan.
Welcome to Offensive Lines, the second in our bi-weekly series of off-season podcasts. I'm Marlon.
I'm Boyd. Take two.
Indeed.
Yeah, we had a few technical issues last night, so we're doing this again Friday night. So sorry to anybody out there that was looking for it. Hopefully some of you missed it and was wondering where the hell we went. So,
well,
here
you did post a notice.
Yes, but I don't know how many of our podcast listeners read the website.
This is true. So, as we just approach sort of semi-free agency period, the NFL is a pretty quiet place right now.
It's weird not having anything to really look at. It's just all procedural shit going on right now. There's nothing too interesting going on. Although the league did send out a memo today to the team saying that to not have any contact with the players in the next 3 days, and they couldn't agree to any deals. And then just before we start the podcast, I look online and see that Donta Robinson has agreed to a contract with the Kansas City Chiefs already.
Yeah, I hadn't even noticed it. You were the one who broke that news to me, so to speak. But I genuinely don't understand how that works with the rules as I understood them. Though I think it's becoming more and more clear that these rules are just meaningless and silly. Yeah,
they're put there for our benefit, to make us think that, okay, everything's on the up and up and everybody has a fair shot at getting these guys. I bet you that Robinson deal was done a week ago.
Oh, probably. And really, why not? And there are so many quirks and little semantic things about this. For example, Ed Reed doesn't have an agent. So because he's the actual player, he can't speak to teams during this upcoming period where only the agents can contact teams.
Yeah, I don't know how they get away from tampering or any of that. You can put all the rules you want, but unless you're monitoring their cell phones, their agents' phones, the team phones, you're never going to stop it. It's almost like Deep Throat. I could meet him in a parking garage in Kansas City and agree to a deal. Like, it doesn't matter. Why don't they just open up? Here's the date you can start signing, like right after the Super Bowl. Why don't all contracts expire after the Super Bowl?
That's what I was just going to say. After the Super Bowl, it should be ready to go. I mean, but there are all sorts of dates for signing bonuses and roster bonuses and that, too, that I guess come into play.
Yeah, but just grandfather, what the hell's the difference if you move it up? Like, tell them now. If you wanted to make the rule change, tell them now, after this year's free agency, that next year after the Super Bowl, it's open season. Like, leave it, you make it 3 days after the Super Bowl or a week after the Super Bowl so the team can enjoy the win and that they don't get lost in the shuffle of all the player transactions, but make it a week after the Super Bowl.
Well, and as a team, I'd prefer that too, because say real negotiations are happening and you see that there's a lot of interest in a player that you can't afford to sign, you know you're going to lose him. That's going to affect your draft strategy as well.
Well, yeah, but the draft isn't until April, so most of the free agents are done by then. Like, I get your point, but I guess it gives them time to... They have to worry about the draft and everything, too, and get ready for that. And it would take away the lead up to the Super Bowl, too, if you made it that close.
Yeah, that is true, but...
Because you'd get more news stories about potential free agents on Super Bowl teams than you would about the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you have a valid point there.
But get rid of all the... Just, okay, here's the date.
But simplify it, I think, is where you're going here, right?
Like, who cares? You know they're all tampering. You can send out as many memos as you want. Like, saying there's no tampering in the NFL or any pro sports is like saying there's no drug use in the NFL. It's bury your head in the sand and pretend it's not happening.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, so there's that coming up. I haven't really even examined the Chargers yet to see what is up there, except that the Meacham deal appears that it's going to be an albatross around my team's neck for at least one more year.
For the Titans, they signed Rob Baronis Thursday to 2 years, $7.5 million, but still have 8 free agents, including Jared Cook and Sinderic Marks, and probably the best kick returner we've had in a long time, Darius Renaud. He's a free agent. We won't get any of those guys back.
Didn't you have that Italian kick returner too?
Yeah, but what's he going to be like after he shattered his leg in the preseason?
That's true.
So I don't know who they have or what the goal is, but apparently we're interested in an offensive lineman from Buffalo.
Well, and plus, at this stage, every team has to figure out which players on its team likes girls,
Yeah, I wonder if they put out a survey in the training packet they gave them for the off season. Could you please answer these questions and submit it back to us? Or maybe they'll just get them to tweet it.
And if our listeners aren't aware, Manti Te'o was asked, does he like girls, allegedly, at the Combine interviews, which is, in my opinion, unethical, repugnant, and illegal.
Well, it is, but these teams hire private detectives to dig up dirt on these guys before they draft them. So does this surprise you at all?
It surprises me that any organization that's dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars would be so foolish to think that they could do this.
Well, they can, because they have total exemption from any government oversight. They can do whatever the hell they want. That antitrust is a beautiful thing if you're a business in the U.S., because it guarantees you monopoly status. So, and no government interference. So they can do whatever they want. Jeff Ireland, the Dolphins GM, asked Des Bryant if his mom was a prostitute. Is that any better?
No, it's no better. It's equally repugnant in my mind. And, I'm glad we're starting to see a shift among a few leading players, that the, raging homophobia in the game will start to crumble.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's true. We have a couple of players doing it. Chris Cluey and I can't remember Ian Badejo's first name for Baltimore, but Cluey's a punter for the Vikings, and they actually presented a case to the courts about allowing legalizing gay marriage. Like, that's a big step forward for jocks, because when most times they don't want to upset anybody so you don't lose a sponsorship deal or a potential sponsorship deal. But until the culture in the black community changes about homophobia, there's nothing's going to change in football. 70% of the players are African American, and they are like admitted homophobes. You saw it during the Super Bowl. That Culver from the Niners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I realize that's true, but every little knockdown, I mean, this is a gradual process. You can't eradicate it. But I do think the tide has started to turn. I mean, virtually all football players live in an urban environment, and I think the level of acceptance of homosexuality has greatly increased within the cities, and I think the players will slowly follow suit.
Yeah, but is that just going to be lip service because they know it's...
It starts with lip service, and that becomes eventually general acceptance. If you are giving the lip service, eventually your attitude will change, particularly because you're going to be in contact with publicists, agents, fashion people. I mean, as a celebrity athlete or a pro athlete, you're going to be in touch with a lot of people who are openly gay now. And I don't think that was the case even 20 years ago. So I do think it will start to change, and I think it has to change.
Well, I think the amount of gay players in any sports league I don't think has changed. They've always been there. They just can't admit it.
Oh, exactly. I mean, Peter Gent was writing about homosexual relations in North Dallas 40 from his playing time with the Cowboys in the 60s.
Well, I'm surprised we haven't seen any. Like, I know there's been a few come out after they were done in the NFL for 5-6 years. I'm surprised we haven't seen, like, older players, any of them come out. Like, the guys that are in their 60s or 70s and just say, yeah, I'm gay. So what? Because there has to be a superstar player that was gay. Somewhere along the line, there had to be one.
Probability supports that. I mean, football, because of the culture that initially gets people into the games, may be less than the 10% of the population that is gay, but it's still going to have homosexuals. Welcome to the real world, people.
5%, there's approximately a little over 1,500 players. If it's 5%, you're looking at 75 players. And not one person's come forward. And I know they think they'll get cut or ridiculed or everybody will be afraid to shower with them. I don't know what would make that any different than if you're a straight guy and you were in a co-ed shower and you're not attracted to everybody walking around naked.
No, you're not attracted to everybody, and you're not going to suddenly turn into some sort of crazed rapist, and it's not going to make you gay. I don't understand it. I think it is on the road to changing. This Manti Teo thing confuses the issue a bit, because I like to make fun of him because he's an idiot.
That's a little different, because he used the girlfriend thing. I think he truly believed who she was, but he embellished to get the press for the Heisman. And then it just blew up in his face.
Yeah, as it accelerated and he saw what it was doing to his public profile, I think he embraced it more and more. But I still think he's just an idiot. I really don't care if he's homosexual or not.
No. He was an idiot. But can you imagine going into a locker room now?
Well, I think he's going to get that abuse anyway. Gay, straight, or whatever. He's going to be mocked for probably the rest of his life. You don't get away with being such a fool and making such a big deal of it yourself and then being exposed. Like, your fall from grace is not going away.
What if he was black? Would we be able to make fun of him?
I would.
But there would be not to. And that's where we run into race. I don't want to get to the whole homophobic and gay issue to get to where we are in race, where you can't have a valid discussion about it, where you just have to watch everything you say. That's what scares me about it, is that eventually we'll get to that point where nobody will say anything because you'll be ostracized and fired and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, that's a valid concern, and one I hadn't really thought about.
You see,
I just wish this stuff would go away, because it makes, my favorite player of all time, Junior Seau, if it had turned out he was gay, would I like him any less? Not a bit. I mean,
you'd probably like him more.
If he had the courage to come out. I have a certain admiration for people who take a hard stance to be exactly who they are, both in front of the cameras and behind them.
But until we get a star top 20 player, you could have the 49th guy in the roster that just plays special teams come out, and it would be big news, but it wouldn't change the culture. You need to have, and I'm not, by saying these names, I'm not saying or insinuating that they're gay, but like Troy Aikman or a Brady or someone, Peyton Manning, like somebody of that stature.
Yeah, someone of that caliber, yes, would be something that actually would change the culture, but I don't think anyone of that caliber is going to be the first to come out. It's going to be someone on the edge who will then, you know, this is my cynical mind, use that as some way to make his name more noticeable.
Yeah,
I think that'll be the first openly gay active player in the NFL.
Big guys will never come out. They'll be too scared of losing the money.
Well, and that gets into it too, and that's all related to the unhealthy association of football and religion. In my mind, it's hard enough to be a Muslim in the NFL right now.
Well, and that brings up a point that ex-quarterback from the Bears, Jim Miller, said. He didn't know if a gay player would be openly accepted in the locker rooms in the NFL because of the different religious cliques that exist, which just seems ludicrous to me, being an atheist and just living by the simple motto of treat people how you want to be treated. How people that study the Bible and claim to be God-fearing people can discriminate against somebody else based on their sexual preference. It boggles my mind. And it's one of the reasons why I'm an atheist.
Well, and fair enough. But something about that, too. Obviously, there are very devout Christians in the league, Tim Tebow being the obvious example. But there are Muslims. I suspect there are probably Buddhists. There are atheists. The players generally find a way to function as a team.
No, they do. And here's the thing I don't get about like having an openly gay teammate. Like you read that book by Jeff Pearlman, Boys Will Be Boys, about the Cowboys?
Yes.
And Charles Haley walking around their facilities just whipping out naked, basically, masturbating in meetings and doing all kinds of stupid shit. And they're okay with that. And they laugh about it. But if he said he was gay doing that, it never would have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, somehow then he would be threatening in a way which he wasn't, though. Honestly, if Charles Haley was swinging his whip around me, I'd be pretty frightened, gay or straight.
No, but I'm just using it as an example of how the behavior that is acceptable if you can play. Yet you hear guys either on the record or off the record say homophobic remarks, and it makes me wonder, what's the difference? Like, I would find that more uncomfortable than having a gay teammate. But these guys are so used to seeing each other naked, I guess it's not that big a deal. But
well, I think even in that book it was implied that many people were disturbed by Mr. Haley's behavior in the locker room.
Yeah, but he could play. If he couldn't play, he would have been cut. If he was my 49th guy on the roster, special teams player, he got cut.
Yeah, absolutely.
Until we get rid of that whole double standard, nothing's going to change on the gay issue. Because that's the fear. I'm going to lose money and I'm going to get cut.
Well, my opinion long term is basically that things have to change. They will change. It's a slow moving train, but I still was a little bit amazed at the audacity of the NFL that they would ask questions that pretty much any high school student, let alone a lawyer, would tell you are flagrantly illegal.
Yes, it is. But like I said, antitrust, if you can get it, it's a wonderful thing. Because you basically set the rules and the government just goes, meh. Like they're more concerned about Spygate than they were about collusion or anything else like that. So
that's true. Well, I think we've exhausted that topic. I think the other big piece of interesting news that's come out in the last 2 weeks was the release through Deadspin of the Carolina Panthers financial statement.
That was amazing to see that online. I was quite shocked. It was nice to see, and the one question that came to mind right away was, why is this not being released through normal news, like one of the big news sites? And Deadspin's a fairly well-known site in the sports world, but it's not considered, like, you wouldn't put it on the same level of reporting, or most people wouldn't, as like ESPN or CBS or NBC or ABC or any of those. I haven't seen it anywhere else mentioned that this is available.
No, except for Pro Football Talk has run short pieces and directs you to Deadspin.
Right, but they don't give an opinion on it.
No.
Tell you that the story's out there, but they won't report on it.
No, they won't do anything that qualifies as investigation, certainly.
Like, why wouldn't you? Well, I can tell you why. Because the NFL would just say, well, next time those agreements come due, you're not getting football again. We'll sell it to somebody else.
To give a little background to our listeners who haven't seen the piece, though we strongly recommend it through Deadspin.
Check it out on our website. I have a link there as well.
Excellent. But one of the more shocking things about it is that the Carolina Panthers, who won 8 games over a 2-year period, made an operating profit of over $110 million in those 2 years. This was at a time when the owners were pleading poverty, throwing out unsubstantiated figures like there's a $200 million cash shortage among the league. And in fact, it was the Carolina Panthers owner who was leading this charge that we have to take the game back from the players. We have to protect our sport from these greedy players who are stealing all the money.
And that statement from Jerry Richardson was just ridiculous. Like, all these leagues, when they negotiate these CBAs, are saying, well, we want to be partners. Well, to me, partners is 50-50. It's not 53-47. But the leagues all want the fans to believe, oh, we're partners. We want them to be partners, and we want to be fair. But they don't. Like, the salary cap could be $200 million right now, and the owners would still be pocketing $150 million a year. Like,
exactly, because this is Carolina, which has low ticket prices. And let's face it, this isn't Dallas. This isn't New York. This isn't Chicago. You know, this is not one of the marquee franchises in the NFL. And that was their profit.
Well, and the part of the lockout was because the owners wanted to try and hash out the revenue that they're not sharing currently or before this last CBA. I don't even know what the numbers are in the new CBA, if they share any of the stadium-generated revenue or not.
And when we speak of that, we're talking about things like luxury boxes, where usually the gate goes 60-40 between the visiting and the home teams. But certain classes of ticket were exempted from that. Luxury boxes, the personal seat licenses, that was revenue that the home team kept exclusively. It didn't go into the revenue pile, which is fairly evenly divided amongst teams.
And it includes like in-stadium advertising. I can almost guarantee you, I haven't been to a game at the new Cowboys Stadium, but I can almost guarantee that monster TV screen that they put in was to run ads during the games. You got 100,000 people, captive audience, at a Cowboys game. Do you think they sell advertising during commercial breaks? Every game's televised.
Oh, absolutely. And they'll do a great job on replay. I mean, Jerry Jones, for all his evil, he actually pays for it and does it right.
But when you look at what Carolina made, Jerry Jones will pay that stadium off in 10 years.
Well, yeah, and that gets me to something about this financial release, which is stunning. I don't think any sport or any team in any of the four major sports, and that's including generously hockey here in North America, I don't think they have ever released a true financial picture like this. So, but all of these teams in all of these leagues want taxpayer subsidies for their stadiums. That's the part I found maybe most offensive about this.
Well, we've been saying that for the last couple of years, that there's very few instances where taxpayers should fund stadiums.
And never in the NFL. Never.
No, and I get, okay, if you want a hotel tax or something like that, it's not going to affect the residents of the city where your team is from. Fine, charge the tourists a hotel tax. Vegas has it now. You get charged $15 a day just for being in their hotel. It's just, they just pocket it. So why can't you do that everywhere else? You think people will stop going to New York because there's a $15 fee or $20 fee on a hotel room? No. So I don't mind that kind of stuff if they want to use that, like tax tourists or whatever. But when you look at $110 million operating profit in 2 years, and Richardson is trying to get, well, he's already got, the city of Charlotte has
ponied up
the money. They've agreed to a sum, and now he's trying to get,
and I think it's $144 million.
And they're trying to get some from the state, and the state's saying no. Well, all these states are broke.
Well, and I may be wrong, but I strongly suspect that Charlotte has better things they could spend $144 million on.
Well, name the city. They all do. Like, they're trying to get a stadium in L.A. The state of California is broke. There's cities and counties declaring bankruptcy. Detroit has declared bankruptcy. The state of Michigan is now controlling the city of Detroit. This is how bad it is in the States. And these owners still want money from...
Now, in Detroit's case, that wasn't because of the Lions. The Fords actually built their own stadium. So I give them props for that.
But it's just the way things are right now. Like 20 years ago, who cares? If you want to subsidize a team, there was money rolling. Now there's no money they don't have enough money to fund police forces.
Well, and these teams will say, oh, this is important to the image of the city, blah, 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 blah. That's never been proven, and in fact has been much closer to disproven, particularly in the case with the Olympics, that it's a huge cash expenditure that has no long-term or even short-term benefits for the hosts. No, so don't give me that shit either.
No, it does benefit some businesses. Like it will. Because every stadium now around it.
I'm talking about the broad population. I mean, yes, obviously there will be people who benefit from anything like this. But will all of North Carolina benefit from the Carolina Panthers being there? No.
Carolina benefits more from the golf courses and the destinations like that than they do from... They probably make more money at Duke. than they do from the Panthers.
Yeah, so... And there was one other thing revealed in this document. The roster depletion allowance. Which basically, there's some sort of loophole in the U.S. tax code that allows over 15 years an equal amount to be deducted from the operating revenue as a tax credit. I'm not stating that well. It appears, say you bought a team for $150 million. I know the number is absurd. But each year you would be able to apply $10 million off of your revenue for tax purposes.
Well, you would get a tax credit. So just think of it as whatever you get to write off on your own personal income tax. But say you bought a car for $30,000 and you were able to write off $1,000 a year or $3,000 a year for 10 years. And basically apply that to your income.
We are not allowed to depreciate our own capital purchases. I'm not exactly certain why an NFL team owner is.
They're basically getting the purchase price back in tax credits. It's almost free.
Yeah, it's like a Subway Club card. 16th year is free.
And they cry poverty. This is why I argue with fans every time there's talk of a collective bargaining agreement and somebody is dumb enough to say the players are greedy. No, the players have learned over the years that the owners will try and fuck them any which way they can. So they have to get every last nickel. This is one of the professions and one of the only professions that I still believe unions are really needed in North America. Because most of the time unions stop companies from making profit now. Like you've seen it in the auto industry, and any big industry that has had unions has suffered as they get into these union contracts that were signed in the 80s that gives you full pension plus benefits plus everything else till you're dead. And it's crushing these retirement plans.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. The owners have as their goal to make money. That is their singular goal, and they have a staff designed to do that. A player has to concentrate, first of all, on his skill set to play the game. You know, if you put them in a financial arena, an owner without a union and good representation will absolutely be destroyed by these people.
Yes.
100% of the time.
Well, and the other thing is, too, that an NFL player, as they get older, their skills don't appreciate. They depreciate. So the owner, when he buys a franchise, like what did Schneider buy the Redskins for? Like $700 million for the stadium and the team? It's now valued at like $1.5 billion or something. No NFL player has that in their contract. They don't sign a 10-year contract, and when they're done playing 5 years, they're making more. They're worth more money than when they started.
Well, that's the secret the owners always keep out of these lockout situations is, oh, we've lost money. Yeah, with creative accountant, you can probably produce an operational loss, but your capital has appreciated at a ridiculous rate if you own a franchise in one of the major sports. And they never mentioned that, you know, the asset they paid, as you said, $600 million, $800 million for, has doubled in value over a 10-year period.
And how, like, just look at when a team comes up for sale. How many people line up, oh, there's this ownership group and there's that ownership group and this and that, and everybody trying to buy them. If they're losing money, nobody's buying them. I didn't see somebody coming riding up into Canada to buy Zellers when it was closing. Nobody buys a dead dog. It's just they don't.
Well, if I knew that after 16 years it's free, Hell, let's get on the list for an NFL club.
It doesn't even have to be free.
But it almost functionally is if you do your accounting right.
Yeah, but if you owned it for 16 years, it's going to double or triple in value. Like they've added this starting in 2014 or the 2013-14 season. Each team is going to get between 50 and 65 million more in revenue from the TV deal than what they currently had during that Carolina Panther financials. So that's just going straight into their pockets. And the salary cap is going up $3 million. Wow.
Well, yeah, and this was funny, too. The Panthers, in response to the information being released, stated that, because of the uncertainty with the lockout, they just didn't sign any players for a year. But...
shit.
Yeah. Now, there are teams that continue to do that, particularly Jacksonville and Cincinnati. And theoretically, there's a rule in this CBA that they have to spend 99% of the cap. I don't know how that is even going to be possible for some of these teams.
And we looked into that a couple of years ago when the CBA was announced. And I don't get how these teams can be 20, 30 million under the cap. But and that's creative accounting too. But it makes me look at all these moves that teams make and what's motivating them. Because, like, I've given you crap over A.J. Smith and the Chargers for years about not re-signing their own free agents and letting the marquee guys walk and sign big money deals elsewhere. But we don't know what happens behind the scenes. Are these deals done? Because you look at San Diego, they don't sell out.
They're in a dispute with the state of California and the city of San Diego over their stadium because they want that paid for or subsidized, let's just say. Meanwhile, LA would take them in a heartbeat.
Yeah, but LA has somebody a company that's willing to put up their own money to build the stadium, which they won't do in San Diego.
Well, yeah, but I think the Chargers, I mean, and this makes sense, this A.J. Smith thing, keep on making those year-to-year profits by not signing these players. You don't really care if they win because you have no intention of being in the city in the long term. And just keep coming at it with a knife.
Well, it's any team. It's not even just San Diego. I use them as an example because
it's a great example because it does explain some of the more bizarre A.J. Smith power play moves. Though I still argue that much of that could be that he's just an arrogant douche. My only thought when they did it was AJ Smith's an idiot and that all these guys think they're smarter than the room and we can cut this guy and replace him with somebody else I've drafted or found as a free agent or something. But now I'm thinking the Titans don't sign Jared Cook or franchise tag him because they were scared he would win his arbitration hearing about being franchise tagged as a tight end or a wide receiver. And it was a difference of a couple of $1 million. But now when you cut him, instead of franchise tagging him at $8 million as a tight end, with the possibility of paying him $10 million if he wins his arbitration, they're going to put in somebody that's probably been on the roster for 2 years as a backup. And a blocker primarily, too.
Yeah, pay him $800,000. So what is the reason? Is it because you're trying to win football games, or does Bud Adams need to stuff his coffin with more money? Because he's got one foot in the grave and the other one's about to step on a banana peel. So, like, how do you know? Like, even the Patriots, how much money do you think they're making? They're never up at the cap level. Brandon Lloyd's going to be gone. Who do they ever sign as a big name free agent? They've signed like one or two.
And I don't even think those are necessarily big names. They usually get them at a bargain price.
Linebacker from Chicago they signed, but that was hurt all the time.
Okay, I'm not certain who. But I mean, yeah, you're letting Welker go. Welker is, his career is going to decline, but you usually will sign your quarterback security blanket, in my opinion.
Brady's never needed. He's put up the numbers regardless. And it's more because they run 8-yard pass patterns. Like Welker rarely runs a pass pattern outside of 10 yards. He'll catch it 7 yards from the line and run. They very rarely throw deep. And I don't think, if they get Amendola from the Rams, and that's the rumor, they won't miss Welker at all. Because Amendola is the same guy. You just plug him into where Welker was, and he'll have 120 catches.
His bones are a little more brittle, but I see your point.
So, but there's tons of teams do that. And I wish somebody would write something. I should send an email to Deadspin and ask them if they can find someone to explain how these teams are going to spend 99% of the cap, or if that's creative accounting too. Because there's teams out there that do, Dallas, Washington.
Oh yeah, there are some teams and some owners, like Washington's a case of a foolish owner, but he would love nothing more to win. Like, I have pretty much total certainty in that. Dallas would love to win. They're not getting the championships, but it's not for lack of trying. There are some franchises, like Cincy, that seems to literally not give a fuck.
Well, you don't have to. Because even if you don't make a lot at the gate, you're going to profit 30 or 40 million just from the TV deal. Like, they're having 50 to 65 million per team. That's just clear profit. That's on top of what they were getting in the last deal. That's just straight profit.
And yeah, when that deal kicks in, somehow through accounting too, I almost guarantee the cap isn't going to go up 30 million or whatever it would be at, 47% of that additional revenue. Somehow that revenue will find a way not to go into the bottom line.
And it's bizarre. But it's almost like the Redskins and the Cowboys getting fined for going over the cap when there was a no cap year.
In I think what we both agree is a clear case of collusion, that somehow the union managed to sign away their right to protest what, well, I think is flagrantly illegal.
Admitting it by getting them to sign away their right to sue. That's clear admission of guilt. Why else would you put it in there if you didn't think you colluded?
Well, and how can anyone look at this? Okay, it's an uncapped year. This is what it says. Oh, but we are going to fine teams for violating the spirit of a salary cap? If that's not actually the definition of collusion, a backroom deal that will all act this way in secret. And to have the balls to find the teams. That still blows my mind, and I cannot believe has not really been attacked by someone on some level. That's grounds to remove their antitrust exemption.
They lost draft picks too. It wasn't just cash. There was draft picks plucked from these guys too. And Jones and Snyder made noise of suing when the decision came down, and then all of a sudden that goes away too, because they get pulled aside and saying, do you want us to lose our antitrust? Well, then you better shut up.
Yeah, the bigger threat is the antitrust, but I still can't believe some grandstanding elected official would not be making noise about this.
Well, they won't. The NFL's too popular, and nobody's going to get behind it. But let's look at a state or a jurisdiction of some type that didn't get an NFL team, whereas inexplicably Jacksonville did. I mean, let's look at a constituency that has some sour grapes. Really just want to fuck with the NFL. I can't believe that someone from there hasn't come out of the woodwork, unless they're holding out the ridiculous hope that the NFL will expand once again and they can get a team. Like they're the all-powerful almighty. It's like we don't want to offend the NFL because then they won't like us. And then maybe we won't get a team, or maybe they'll move the team we have or something. But when Congress and senators are talking about Spygate when it happened and maybe having hearings, and Arlen Specter meeting with Goodell and the one guy that used to videotape the games for the Patriots, the defensive signals.
Yeah, his name escapes me too.
They meet with him, but on this whole collusion thing, there's nothing. It's
like maybe I'm just bitter too because I predicted there would be something because, you know, I was one of the first people, I think, who actually said, obviously this is collusion before I even read it on a site or anything. As soon as the fines came down, I'm just going, what? Like, how do you get away with this? And maybe I'm just bitter because my prediction of hell to come has not happened. But
well, and all the talk leading up to that uncapped year was that players were going to make so much money and we'd see a lot of player movement, when actually salaries went down in an uncapped year and there was less free agent signings. So,
well, and you bring up an interesting point with that too. Last year, there was sweet fuck all really on the free agent market. I'm wondering if that happens again this year, or have the NFL owners just saying, okay, we can collude, grind the players down, but let's just keep doing it. No one seems to care.
Yeah, but the big name guys will always get signed, because the only thing I can think of is that somebody got to these so-called rogue owners like Jones and Schneider to get them to not sign the Albert Hainsworth deals, $100 million contracts and all that stuff. There's only been $800 million.
Kind of went to him with the famous Ted Turner quote. Gentlemen, you know, speaking of Major League Baseball, we have one of the only protected monopolies in America, and we are fucking it up.
But it's just greed. I don't know how much money to make in a business.
Well, in particular, this seems an ego business. The fact that it's making you gigantic sums of money is nice, but wouldn't you want to win? Doesn't that make the money spend even sweeter?
Well, do you remember the line of bullshit they used to feed us? Owning this team's just a hobby. I just love the game. And it's just bullshit. They're making money hand over fist. It's the same. That's the reason that they, like, if you know the NHL, the owners wouldn't tell the players what they made back then, or they didn't want the players talking about what they made. That's why all the salaries are published. It's not to rub our nose in it. It's so every other player knows what the other guy's making, so they know their market value, because the owners are cunts.
Oh, yeah, the level of secrecy, like, if you've read any of the football memoirs, and when they would talk about how they used to negotiate salaries, well, in any sport for any athlete, they would walk into a room, the owner would tell them the number, and then tell them why, or the negotiator would tell them the number, then tell them why they were barely worth that, and take it or leave it, because we can end your career, because we own you.
There was no free agency, there was nothing. And free agency only came to the NFL in the 90s.
Well, you're forgetting Plan B, which happened in the 80s.
Ugh.
Well, and the players' union gave up true free agency when Upshaw protected his own job and signed a terrible deal with the owners.
Yeah, but the players still had to vote on it. You know what I mean? Like, they still...
The players are like, any union shop probably, you figure 10% are aware of what's actually going on?
No, but that should be your executive. They're still the ones that have to present it to the players.
Yeah, but how many players end up with bad agents or bad financial because they just think, okay, I'll let this person handle it?
No, but those
that's going to happen. But Upshaw, like Gene Klein, former owner of the Chargers, was in that negotiation. He just thought, okay, here it comes. Baseball's got free agency. Our whole landscape is going to change because they know that they can force us to accept it. Let's just get a good deal. And Upshaw came in and said, okay, we'll take free agency off the table. And Klein just said he couldn't believe it.
Yeah, a gift from the heavens.
Exactly.
So any fans out there thinking that the owners the players are greedy, please give your head a really big fucking shake. Because they own these teams for decades, and the players' average earning potential or earning years is like 4. They get 4 years average. And that's including the Peyton Mannings and Tom Brady's and the Brett Favres that play 20 years. And the Junior Seaus. So these guys have to get it while they can. I will always support a player against an owner in any sport.
Amen. All right. I think we've covered what's out there, Boyd. What do you think?
Yeah, I do too. That was a good discussion. I'm sure we'll touch on it again. There'll be more come out from this. There'll be a little more fallout. So
yeah, and I'm kind of hoping for it too. I want to see a few other learned and educated people in the field go after this Carolina thing. To help me understand it a little better, because let's face it, I can't read that agreement and make head or tail. That's part of the nature of legal documents, is to make the language impenetrable, so you have to hire a professional.
Yeah. Mumbo jumbo.
Jargon.
Now, I just want to remind people, instead of bi-weekly, next week we'll have a podcast, because I am going on holidays for a week, and so I wouldn't be around for the podcast 2 Thursdays from now, so check it out next week. If you want to listen to our podcast, you can find us on iTunes. Just search Offensive Lines. You can listen to it or download it to your favorite mobile device from our website, offensivelines.ca. You can follow us on Twitter at Offensive Lines. You'll get updates on when we put new posts on the website or when a new podcast is available. You can also find us on Facebook.com/Offensive Lines. And if you would like to contact us, and I would really like, or we would really like someone or more than one to contact us just to let us know we're using new mics this week. That was part of the technical.
It's a learning curve.
We want to know what you think of the sound quality, if there was improvement or something we need to change. You can send those comments to offensivelines@shaw.ca or comment on the website. I'm Boyd.
I'm Marlon. And only, 30-odd weeks till football starts.
It's like the countdown to Christmas.